All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me today. You have logged into a webinar on the Accelerated MBA program here at the Smith School of Business, which used to be the Queen's School of Business. This is a one-year program that you can take while you work in your home city. I always like to start with that so everyone knows exactly what it is you're about to listen to. And you're looking at Goods Hall here, as well as our Smith Toronto location. We have a location right in the middle of Queen's campus, as well as downtown Toronto, about a block from Union Station. And today specifically, we are going to very briefly talk about the program. However, we have general webinars on the website if you want to dive deep into all of the different elements. But today's focus is on meeting some alumni of ours. It's always, I think, great when you're considering taking a program to hear from their perspectives. So that's what the focus of today is. And I'm going to introduce you to all of them in a moment. But I should start by introducing myself. I am Emily Saunders. I'm the director of the Accelerated MBA program. I'm also a graduate of an MBA here at Smith, and I'm based out of Toronto. So I work out of our Smith Toronto location, which is at the corner of Front and Simcoe, right downtown Toronto, as well as one of our panelists today is based out of Toronto. But as you will hear, you can take this program from any city in Canada or anywhere in Canada. And that's what many of our students do. So you'll hear more about that in a moment. Of course, it is important that I acknowledge that the Smith School of Business at our Queen's University location is situated on traditional Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee territory, and our Smith Toronto location is situated on the traditional territory of the Huron-Wendat and Petun First Nations, the Seneca, and the Mississaugas of the Credit River. We are very grateful to be able to live, learn, and play on these lands. Before I get started, I would like to comment that we are very open to any questions you may have. You will see on the Zoom bar or the Zoom ribbon, there is a Q&A button. You can drop your questions in there. If you're not even comfortable identifying yourself, you can drop them anonymously, or you can identify yourself via your name. And we will make sure to get to those questions throughout the presentation. Before I introduce you to our alumni, I'd like to point out that we have 4 MBA programs here at Smith, just so you know how AMBA fits into this roster of programs. We have 2 executive MBA programs. One is our national program, so it's just based across Canada. It's 16 months long, starts every August. It's designed for working professionals, so you don't have to quit your job. You can keep working while you take this degree, and there is an international elective as part of it. Like our Executive MBA Americas program, which is in collaboration with Cornell, you do need about 8 to, I'd say, 20 years of experience. It is a bit of a more senior cohort, and some leadership experience is required. Our Cornell program is in collaboration, our Queen's Cornell program is in collaboration with Cornell. It is an 18-month program. It starts every June, so they just kicked off their new cohort this month, and you receive an MBA from both Queen's and Cornell. And it's also designed for working professionals, but not just within Canada, also the USA and Latin America. We, of course, have a full-time MBA program, which is actually ranked #1 in the country of all full-time MBA programs by the Financial Times. It is 12 months long and also has a January start like AMBA, but it is offered within Kingston. So you do need to take a pause on your job for a year, move to Kingston, and really immerse yourself in the program. The Accelerated MBA program, which is what we're here to talk about today, is a 12-month program, and it starts also in January, but it's designed for working professionals who have an undergraduate in business. So because you have an undergrad in business, you do receive advanced standing for some of those credits that you took in undergrad, and you're able to therefore take this degree while you continue to work, and you can take it from any town or city in Canada. At a very high level, the basics, as I said, it's a 12-month program from January to December. I think there's typically a couple of deliverables due in the following January, but class is wrapped up by December. You can take it while you work. It's 4 class days a month, so you have class every other week, all day Sunday and a half day Monday. You, as part of the experience, you have 3 on-site sessions, which we'll talk about today, where your entire cohort comes together in either Kingston or Toronto, and you're able to connect with Queens and your classmates. We use a team-based approach, as we do with all of our MBA programs, and we'll talk more about that. And you do receive some great support as an MBA student, just like in all of our other MBA programs. You have a team coach, a career coach, and an executive coach. So with that, let's jump into meeting our alum. So we have 3 alum joining us today. I'm very grateful to have them. They're all fairly recent, with Haley graduating last May and Max and Shauna just graduating. And so I'm not going to introduce them because I want them to introduce themselves, and they'll just maybe go across the screen here, starting with Haley. So Haley, if you don't mind introducing yourself, letting us know, why you took this program, what team you're on, and what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. So nice to see everyone on the line today. So I am Haley McKechnie. Before I jump into the Smith side of myself, I am a national marketing manager at KPMG in Canada. I run the marketing for 5 of their business portfolios across the country. So I am located in Calgary, Alberta, and that is where I completed my accelerated MBA out of the Calgary boardroom. And the big reason why I decided to take my MBA here at Queen's is I was looking to do something with my career that was a little bit more holistic. So being able to have impact on the entire business portfolio, not just a small section of the business. So that was really the driving factor to really, dive deep into the strategy, dive deep into the finance side of things, coming from a background in marketing.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Haley. And we'll go across the country to Max. Max, why don't you introduce yourself, tell us what you do and why you took the AMBA, and also, of course, what
Yeah,
team you're on.
of course. Yeah. Hey, everybody. Super excited to be here. Thanks for having me, Emily. So my name is Max Flynn. I'm based in Halifax, very far from Calgary. And I was part of the most recent graduating class of the AMBA, part of a virtual team, which is really cool. So I'll get into that a little bit. But my background and what I'm doing right now is I'm the strategy and business development manager at a clean tech startup. So we're kind of, way back in that funding early stage, kind of trying to get the money together for clean tech, which is deep penetration. So really different, takes a different skill set, which I actually learned quite a lot of the skills that I'm implementing from the AMBA program, which is really nice. So like I said, I was part of the most recent class, but I was on a virtual team, which was really interesting. So out of Halifax, I was able to kind of connect with actually different teammates from across the country. We were all the way up in northern Quebec to Newfoundland, few in Halifax, Montreal, Toronto, which made a really cool, diverse group to come together and kind of tackle problems, which was really fun. And that was actually the big draw to Queen's and this program as well. I really wanted to have that flexibility. For some of my personal stuff and my career, I kind of needed to stay in Halifax, and being able to do that through a virtual team was awesome. And I actually think that was probably my biggest takeaway. The thing I really, really enjoyed was being able to do that from Halifax in my hometown virtually, and then still getting to go to Kingston, going to Toronto, connect with classmates. So that's a little bit about me.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Max. Shauna.
Awesome. Hi, everybody. My name is Shauna Sri Karuna. I'm currently a consultant at BCG. I was part of the most recent accelerated MBA class with Max. I originally started my career in accounting and pivoted to consulting. And what I had realized is there were more like strategic thinking and behavioral things that I wanted to improve on as I continued in consulting. So I thought AMBA would be a really great way to be able to learn that more higher level strategic thinking, execution, while being able to come back to work the next day and implement it. And so I found that it was really great for my career and a really great learning opportunity. And I picked Queen specifically. I'd done my graduate diploma in accounting after I graduated from Dalhousie and really loved the professors and the experience. So Smith seemed like a good way to go.
Amazing. Thank you all 3 of you. Great job. And we're going to, of course, dive quite a bit deeper in some of the things that they referenced in those introductions. And just a reminder, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the Q&A chat. So let's talk about the on-site sessions, and we're going to again talk about the team-based approach, talk about the weekly classes, and also just talk about the life of an AMBA student. But there were a few things that I really wanted to highlight because they're such an integral part of the program. So the on-site sessions are when you come to either Kingston or Toronto to really feel a part of Queen's, feel a part of the community, not just the Queen's community, but also the Kingston community, connect with your classmates, your teammates, your professors, and also it allows you to to complete a significant portion of the curriculum, which is how we're able to finish this degree in only a year while you continue to work. So it's 10 days in January, a week in June, and then a week finally to close everything down in Toronto, which is actually new. Haley, I think you would have done all 3 weeks in Kingston. You're probably wondering what I'm talking about, but Max and Shauna's was the first year where we went to Toronto for the final closing, and we're doing it going forward. And you can see some pictures there. The top, I think, is the current class, but the bottom picture is Max and Shauna's class. So I'd love to go, and maybe we'll start with you, Haley. If you could talk about your on-site experience, and I don't know if you have a particular highlight, or you can speak to the challenging parts of it, but it just in general, tell us a little bit about it from your perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. So as I mentioned before, I was from the Calgary boardroom. For a little bit of context, during my year, there was only one cohort in the Calgary boardroom. So it was a team of 7 people. So the on-sites were such a big highlight for us because we weren't in Toronto. The Toronto boardroom does have multiple teams in it. So it did allow us to kind of have more time to connect with people from across the country, which I think, again, is the big benefit of being on-site and getting to meet everyone in person. And Max spoke to this a little bit earlier, but like really connecting with people across the country and building that network for yourself. I would say a highlight for being on the on-site sessions from a curriculum perspective is you do get to do a lot of simulations. So doing that kind of in breakaway rooms with your team, with other teams, working with different people who you don't normally work with, it was, such a big highlight from the academic side of things. I would also say from the personal side of things, there is a lot of team building exercises that you get to do. I think there's a photo there in the top left of a pretty competitive game going on. So that is, something that is a highlight and a benefit, and getting to know people outside of their professional setting. So definitely a highlight. I would say it is a pretty intense program because it is only 12 months. So when you are on site, it is intense. It is, long days in the classroom. So the challenge is just really making sure that you're prepared to do that and to get the most out of it, making sure your readings are done, making sure all of your projects are kind of right where they need to be so you can really immerse yourself in the experience. But yeah, it definitely was a highlight of the program, and I think something very unique to Smith.
Thank you so much, Haley. Yeah, and you make a good point that what we try to do as much as possible is give you the opportunity to do some of that pre-work prior to the on-site, so that you can really, jump in. Of course, there's still some work to be done. You're in class all day, every day, but we hope that you're able to get to, try the ice skating in Kingston, or we go paddleboarding in the summer, those sort of things while you're in Kingston. And Max, did you have anything to add, or a highlight of yours maybe with the on-sites?
Yeah, you know what? Haley did a really good job. Kind of hit all the points I was going to mention. Really big, it was a highlight for me as well. Just getting there, seeing everybody from the class across the country, very different backgrounds and careers was very interesting to me. Like talking to Shauna from consulting and just sort of learning the ins and outs of different careers was really nice. One thing maybe I'll just add in for the group. I was very impressed. Emily, to toot your horn here, with how smooth it worked. You would put up in a hotel, you'd wake up in the morning, there would be a bus outside, you'd get on your bus and you would go to your class, and the food would come to you, and it was a very, very seamless operation. It seemed like, for me, sitting in the classroom chair, right? And the bus would come at the end of the day, they would take you to the dinner, everything seemed to be thought out, which was really, really nice. Because I know for some people showing up to Kingston, they might not be there too often. So it felt very easy, very smooth. You're able to really focus in on the school, on the connections. So that was awesome.
Great, Max. I'm so happy that it appeared that way. Behind the scenes, maybe not as much, but that's great. Shauna, no worries if you don't have anything to add, but anything you want to touch on?
Echoing what both of them said, but in addition, I just thought it was a very thoughtful, the on-sites were always very thoughtful in terms of we have this 1 week together. What courses are we going to do, or what type of teaming activities are we going to do to make sure that you get exposure to everybody else in the class? And I thought that was very well thought out for all 3 of the on-site sessions. And it was definitely something that the first one was difficult because it's the first one that you do when you're there all day, but the other 2 became something that everybody was always looking forward to.
Yeah, I find the first one everyone's so intimidated by. They're almost not looking forward to it. They're like, okay, I have to go for 10 days in January to Kingston, which is I mean, I think Calgary might be even nicer at that time of year. And then the June and the December one people can't wait for, because they, built those friendships, built those relationships. And I think normally by the end of the January when everyone's always sad to leave. Maybe we'll start with you, Shauna, to talk about the team approach in general. And we can talk on the next slide about, the whole boardroom experience and what that looked like in Toronto for you, but just specifically focusing on the team approach. And I should have got pictures of your teams, everyone. Instead, I have pictures of, I think, Team Calgary from Max and Shauna's year. And then I think that's a virtual team from your year, Haley, because I've had them join me before. Anyways, if you could just talk about, and feel free to, talk about the tough parts of this, but basically you're put into a team at the beginning of the program, and you do a lot with that team. You work from course to course together. You have a bunch of, probably about 40% of your deliverables are team-based. You sit with each other for class every week, all of these things. But if you want to talk about, again, Shauna, feel free to share highlights or lowlights of, or the challenges associated in what your experience was like on a Toronto team.
Yeah, so I think so in the January session, you spend a lot of time setting up teaming norms. And when you're doing it, it felt like it didn't really make sense. But once you leave, that almost became the holy grail of resources that you use to navigate the teaming approach throughout the year. So how the teams were set up is that you were with however many number of people on your team, and as you approach different assignments and different deliverables that come up, you determine like who takes the lead, who's supporting, and what each person does. And I think what was really helpful about that first session is there are a set of guidelines that you follow to do this, which should make it seamless. What makes it challenging is you're now in a group of however many people that are very different and might approach things different to you. So I thought the first half of the year felt like you were learning so much about other people. And a big takeaway for me was that people can view things in such different ways, like even just school related stuff. Like you approach an assignment in a certain way, you come together with somebody else that did the same assignment, and you're like, wow, I had no idea that somebody else was viewing it this way. So in that case, like I thought it garnered a lot of interesting perspective from people, but in the same way, like personalities operate very differently. And I think that the big learning was communication and approaching situations with open-mindedness and assuming that everybody came with good intention. It was a highlight. Like, I think you build such close relationships with your team. You end up having a lot of fun with your team. I'm still, like, my team and I still see each other after the program's over. So I think it's a great way to learn, and it's a great way to think about how you might operate in a workplace as well when you're starting to leverage your peers to help get things done. Like, how are you going to work with this group of people to get to a common goal?
Yeah, excellent summary. And you reminded me, because I had a team as well when I did my MBA over 5 years ago, and it's one of their birthdays, and we're all like WhatsApping this morning saying happy birthday, and one of them's in Calgary, so we're asking how Stampede is. But you really do kind of, because you're going through this pretty challenging shared experience together, those bonds are formed quickly. Max, you had a unique experience in that your team wasn't all together in the boardroom every other week when you had class. How did your team operate and stay close with one another?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it was definitely unique, and similar. Like it was great. Like you come together, you kind of keep that those, what did you call it, Shauna? Like team norms. Like that was really big for us. Like we really, really leaned on that because we're in different provinces, we're in different time zones. So our work schedules didn't actually always line up. Someone was getting off early, someone was starting late or something like that. So we really leaned on those. We leaned on some of the support from the program as well. You get a team coach, and they really helped sort of, that helped us work through that stuff, because I think we had to be even stronger on the communication because we weren't seeing each other every week. We didn't maybe know what was going on, and was really interesting, right? Like we're kind of in this hybrid virtual work world anyway. So being thrown into this program with classmates to work through problems like that was really good. Like it was amazing learning. I think we did a good job building those relationships, but we actually had to be quite it wasn't maybe as organic because we weren't seeing each other. I think we had to make the effort. We had to make the WhatsApp group, and we had to kind of messing each other and doing it, which worked out really well, and we're still, like you said, like still chatting all the time, birthdays, this and that, new milestones, some engagements, and some promotions, new jobs and stuff. So it was awesome. It was a challenge, and I think that in the end, I learned quite a lot from that, and I'm very grateful for that for sure.
I don't know the engagement news. I'm going to have to follow up with you so you can tell me which of the team members that is, because I have not heard that yet. That's great. Thanks, Max. Haley, anything to add?
No, I think everyone did a great job summarizing it. I think one of the biggest takeaways, obviously you have like your technical skills that you learn, as I mentioned, like with people have very different backgrounds, so they pick up their own kind of technical skills. But I think from my team, the theme that came out of it is we did have team challenges, and we had to deal with them kind of head on. And so for context, I chose to do my MBA after 2 years working professionally. So I would say I was on the lower end of experience going into the team. And some of the challenges that we ran into, maybe I hadn't encountered yet in my career. So some of the biggest learnings came from the soft skills, not necessarily the technical skills, which I think, again, is unique to Queen's because it is such a team-based approach, is really the only other thing I'd say.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think so much of this, this team-based approach, which I think is a pillar of all of our MBA programs, is actually all about the soft skills at the end of the day. And it's not that you're learning them in a lecture, you're learning them every single day. Well, you have to operate these people who you've just met, who work in different fields, different industries, come from different backgrounds. And so the whole idea is that you're learning how to use those skills to operate effectively in a team, and that you can immediately apply that to the workplace. So I think that's a great point.
And all that to say, our team was still very close. And speaking from a year or 2 years out now, I guess, we still keep in contact. And again, like celebrate those milestones, celebrate birthdays, or even just go for grab a coffee. They're kind of the people that you would lean on professionally when, you don't maybe feel comfortable speaking to someone within your organization or something like that.
Yeah, you're reminding me of, I think your team had someone who had a baby in the program, right? Like
We did. And it was one of our teammates. She gave birth during our June session. So she missed our
right.
June
She
session.
missed the June session. I remember that. I was on maternity leave, but I remember that. But it's such a good example of how the team shows up for one another. Like someone can go through a major life event and ask the team, cover for me for this month, and I'll get you back, next month or the prior month. Like it's a great example of what the whole purpose of the team-based approach is supposed to do.
Yeah, and it was incredible because we did get many baby visits during our lunch hour. So
that's amazing. That's awesome. So let's talk about the biweekly classes. So you and there's always some questions around how this works. And so you are either on a virtual team or a boardroom team. And we have boardrooms in Vancouver, Calgary, Mississauga, Toronto, Markham, and Ottawa. And then if you live outside of those cities, or you travel a lot for work and you can't consistently be in class in person, you would join a virtual team. And we try to have virtual teams kind of within certain regions, so your time zone is never more than an hour. So we had a virtual West, virtual Central, and virtual East team. Max was on the virtual East team, which is kind of like Ontario and East of there. So if you're in a boardroom, you go to class every other week, again, all day, Sunday, Monday, and the professor is actually in Kingston teaching out of our studio. It's pretty innovative technology. We've been doing this for many, many years, and it allows the professor to engage with everyone, whether you're on a virtual team or an in-person team. So it's not like they're teaching to people in person and the virtual teams are just calling in. Everyone is in a different room from the professor, but the technology allows them to, for example, you can see there's a student in the bottom left-hand side of the screen on the far right photo. She's asked a question. The professor can see what their name is, what team they're on, where they work, what their background is, etc. So the professors quickly get to know the students, and then that is broadcasted across either the virtual teams on Zoom or the boardrooms. And you can see on the left, in those left photos, you can see an in-person Toronto team there, and a virtual team, which is actually my team, which wasn't supposed to be virtual, but it was during COVID. And so if you're on a virtual team, it still is really interactive, and we'll have actually Max speak to that. But even though you're not physically together, it's as seamless as possible. When you have a breakout session, it's immediate. You're all in a breakout room together outside of the classroom. So maybe I'll start with you this time, Max, and you can talk about that experience and if you felt, were you at a disadvantage because you weren't in person with your team? You've already done a good job talking about connecting with your team, but if you could talk about the actual class component of it.
Yeah, of course. No, not a disadvantage at all. I think it was very, very well set up. Like you said, like you've been doing it for years now, like, and you can tell, and having the professor sort of in Kingston anyway, like everybody sort of was also on a screen, right? And I could see all the other boardrooms. If Shaw was going to answer a question, she would pop up on mine. So it was still interactive like that, any old Zoom or Teams or whatever call you want to use. And I found that you could still engage with the professor, you could still engage with the class. The structure of the classes, week in and week out, were still structured that you could do that. So I could kind of still, put my virtual hand up. I could still ask a question. I could do it in a chat. And there was lots of great breakout rooms as well, which worked really, really well for our virtual team. Like I really don't think that, well, I was going to say besides having a whiteboard, but we had a virtual anyway, virtual whiteboard. So it was perfect. So we could kind of do everything together, be nice and structured when we get in those break rooms and kind of have someone lead the conversation. So I thought it was very smooth. I have nothing but good stuff to say. So I can go on and on about that, or you can ask someone else if you want.
You could roll out of bed right into class, which I'm sure for Shauna and Haley, who had to travel downtown, especially for Haley, where class started at 7:30 in the morning Mountain Time. That sounds probably fairly luxurious. So Haley, I don't know if you have anything. I mean, we do always have a Calgary team. Calgary's always been a great market. We often have 2 Calgary teams. Can you speak at all to the Calgary boardroom experience?
Yeah, it was great. I mean, I know you mentioned it is early 7:30, but what is nice about it, and I think we'll get into this a little bit later, but then you do kind of have time at the end of the day, rather than it being dinner time and going home to your family and whatnot. You can kind of like stick around and get some things done when we talk about like the workload. So that is the benefit of being on a West Coast time. In terms of the actual boardroom experience, similar to Max, again, very, very smooth. You can tell that you guys have been doing it for a while. I think one thing that really works well is because you're in a boardroom together, you can kind of have those like side conversations. So if, say, for example, you're going through an accounting module and there's someone who's an accountant on your team and the rest of the team isn't, they can kind of like really help be there to support their team because you're in that boardroom together. And again, like the professor can still see you, they can still hear you, but there is that little level of like autonomous working that you can do together in the boardroom. So I'd say that was a big benefit. Sometimes you can learn best from your classmates just as much as the professor. So
yeah, great point. That's a huge benefit of the team-based approach we didn't talk about, is that it's so much, especially, and this is what differentiates an MBA so much compared to a commerce undergrad, is you can learn so much more from your peers, and that they all have at least 2 years of work experience. The average is 5 to 6 years of work experience, and they're all from different industries across Canada. So we have people in Ottawa that work in federal government. We have people, Haley doesn't work in oil and gas, but a lot of the Calgary teammates typically work in oil and gas. And we have a lot of people in finance and consulting in Toronto. And so you're getting this kind of like pan-Canadian view from not just your teammates, but also your classmates. That's a great point, Haley. Shauna, you had a bit of a different experience in that the Toronto location last year had 4 Toronto teams. Can you speak a little bit to that? And were you able to bond with those other teams, or do you normally kind of stick with your team within the boardroom?
Absolutely. I think that it probably started out where we like kind of stuck together more, but then after the first month or so, everybody, I think, made an intentional effort to either eat lunch together or like go and sit in certain rooms when we had breaks and try to interact with each other more. And I think the 4 like boardroom groups became quite close, and like we would do things outside of school together and like try to organize big events as well. What was really nice about being in the Toronto room is that a lot of times when people came to visit Toronto, they would try to make a like weekend out of that class weekend and come sit in on some of our boardroom sessions as well. So we got to have guests from time to time, which is always fun. And I think what Haley had mentioned about being able to have those side conversations, it was, I actually preferred that than being in a class all the time, because there's sometimes where like a professor says something a little quickly, you don't want to cut in and like put your hand up as they're going on. So you could just turn to someone and be like, wait, what do you think? What did they just say? Or what did they mean? And have those discussions. But then there was also a whole other group of people that if something maybe wasn't resonating, or it's like we were a new deliverable just got announced, or we're starting a class, you had a break to go out and say, oh, that was interesting that we just talked about that, and like have another set of people to talk to as well. So I thought it was a really good and unique experience where it felt like there were a lot of classmates around me, but still the class itself felt very like personal to me and my team.
Yeah, that's a great explanation. I'm so glad you made that point. That's a great point too, that because we have these boardrooms across Canada, if you travel for work or for personal reasons and there's a class weekend, you're welcome to, let's say you're going to Banff for the weekend, you're welcome to sit in on the Monday class in Calgary with the Calgary team, even if you're, based out of Halifax, let's say. So thank you, Shauna. That's great. So I want to talk about the support that you receive as a student, and there's multiple different kind of facets of coaching. And the three I want to focus on is team coaching, executive coaching, and career coaching. So the team coaching, everyone mentioned, or a couple of you at least mentioned this briefly. Every team receives a coach that is dedicated to your team throughout the year. So they have kind of monthly or bi-monthly check-ins with you. You meet them during the on-sites in person when you build that charter. They are there to support you. If there are challenging times, they're there to kind of guide you through it. And they're, someone to bounce things off. If you feel that you want to give constructive feedback to a team member, but you're not sure how, they can support you and coach you in that. And even if you don't want to, they might support you and coach you in that. So they're there to kind of teach your team how to be high performing. Everyone does get an executive coach. You get 3 hours a year plus an intro call. So often people will do, 6 30-minute calls scattered throughout the year, and you can talk to them about whatever it is you want. They are completely separate from Queen's. We hire them and contract them in. So it's completely confidential. And then, of course, we have excellent career coaches. We have what we call the Career Advancement Center, which also is just ranked #1 in Canada by the Financial Times. And there are corporate relationship managers that are there to post jobs and build partnerships with our corporate partners. But there's also a whole division of career coaches that specialize in different areas. And you can book up to, I think it's, close to one-on-one meeting a week, whether you want to talk about, your next steps, or build your resume, or get feedback on your cover letter, maybe do some consulting interview prep, those sort of things. They are there to support you. So maybe we'll start with you, Shauna. And if you could speak to even just one of these or multiple, whatever you'd like, and how you leverage them.
Absolutely. So I thought like the CAC was one of the most helpful resources that I had during my MBA. That was actually one of the reasons I wanted to come to Smith as well. I had heard really good things about the Career Center and recruiting in general through Queen's. And I think what was really helpful about the Career Center is that whether you go in with the intention of like knowing what you want out of the Career Center, knowing what you want to do post MBA or not, they have so many resources to help you understand what you like about your job, what you like about a career, and how to use the answers to that to help find a career or make the job that you have work best for you. So there's these modules that you can do at the beginning of the program that starts out just by going through like, what are your interests? What do you like about work? What do you like prioritize in your life? And you get a couple reports that come out of that. And a lot of it I found for myself at least was validating, but there were some parts of it that I was like, I know I like this, but it wasn't something that I had explicitly really like formalized in my mind. So I got a lot of great insights there, and they really helped me with my navigation through recruiting. Like I didn't know if I necessarily wanted to recruit through the program, if I did like my job, so I didn't know if that was something I wanted to leave. And they really helped me figure out, okay, like this, maybe let's try this. These are your next steps. And now that you know these things, let's work on your resume, let's work on your cover letter. And so they were very, very helpful throughout. When I was recruiting over the summer, I booked tons of sessions with them to look over my resume, my cover letter, and even do some case prep. And they they focus less on this is what we're going to do to help you get a job, and more on how can you present yourself most authentically to get a career that works for you, which is a approach that I really like.
Amazing. And obviously, hopefully it was all successful as you were able to, I believe, change jobs during the program. So, I mean, again, that's a lot to do with the work that you've put into it, because I think what Shauna has done a great job showing here is that with not just the career services and the coaching, but with everything, the more you put into it, the more you get out of it. And so you're very busy throughout the year. Choosing to do a lot of these things takes time and effort. But one thing I always like to point out is that, you know, you start the program in January, classes wrap up in December, but you actually don't graduate till May, just because that's the Queen's schedule. And so from January to May in the second part of the program, you can continue to leverage all of these resources. And that's when often you have a lot of the time to do so. Haley, were you able to leverage any of these three facets of coaching?
Yeah, maybe I'll touch on team coaching a little bit, because this is something that's like really well integrated into the program. I like say out of the three, like executive and career coaching, like you definitely have to make your own time to do it, and I would 100% say it's worth it. As Shauna mentioned, like it's so individualized and personalized, it's actually quite impressive. But the team coach is something that's really integrated into the program itself, which I think is interesting, and they do a great job. And again, they help facilitate how to best give feedback. You do a mid-year review and a year-end review of your peers. And so that's all facilitated through the team coach, which I think is a really great way to do it. You have a one-on-one interview with the team coach. They present feedback. They have sessions where your team can give you feedback. You can give your team feedback. And so it does really function like a workplace, although you have more dedicated time to it in the Smith program. And so it is something, again, that's unique and is applicable right away outside of the program. And they are someone you can always go to if there are challenges. They really help kind of be the buffer in those situations, which is great.
Excellent. Thank you. Max, anything to add?
Yeah. So with executive coaching left, I'll try and speak to that.
Perfect. I was hoping that's what you choose. That worked out well.
One thing I will say just before I kick off is that I have a sport background, so I really gravitated towards the coaching. I really enjoyed it. I got a lot of value out of all three of these categories.
Max, just for context, can you tell everyone about your sports background?
Yeah. So I sailed on the Canadian sailing team for 5 years or so before I entered a career, and then pursued my MBA after that. So that was a lot of fun. Actually spent a fair amount of time in Kingston, training there, which was amazing. And on the coach, I mean, I had lots of coaches through that, right? Like from mental performance to on water, to just so many coaches, right? So then to get this, and when I started my career, I really wanted that. Like I was always reaching out, and not to get too personal on the call, but sometimes a boss doesn't have that capacity to kind of connect with you. And there's bosses out there for sure, but for me, I found like, okay, I'm maybe not getting that level of coaching that I'm used to in a boss or in a manager or something like that. So being able to have a system in place through Queens, through this program, to kind of tap into that coaching was awesome. And the executive coach was really what you wanted it to be, kind of talking to some of my classmates and what they got out of it. Like everybody's at different stages in their career and their life and what they're looking for. And basically there's just this long list of contracted coaches through Queens that you can tap into, and you have that intro call and you get to go through their basically resumes or their bios, and you pick, okay, well, this one seems to be a good fit for what I'm looking for. They have a background in consulting or a background in tech or a background in marketing or something like that. So that was a lot of fun, kind of getting to sort of be the hirer, right? And going and meeting them. And I think I had three intro calls. And maybe it wasn't the right fit or the right thing I was looking for. And I was able to kind of have that variety. And then when you kind of got to work with your coach, you could dig in on whatever you wanted. That was my experience. Like I said, I really want to kind of see some new avenues for my career. Like, what would that look like? How do I go about that? We worked quite a lot. Like, we work quite a lot actually with this executive coach. It's interesting to think about it now. But really working on that like first 100 days when you start a new job, like what do you focus in on? How do you do that? How do you map it out? And I found it quite valuable. And and Shauna, I'm sure you could find an executive coach that was really geared up for that, big four consulting or helping you kind of with that pathway. I'm sure there was some coaches like that. So, really great part of the program for sure. And echoing what the other two panelists had to say.
Awesome. Thank you. I really appreciate you choosing the one that hadn't been spoken about. Thanks, Max. Okay, so those are all kind of the core components of the program I wanted to talk about. And of course, if you join a general webinar, which we will have one set up by the end of the month, we dive even deeper into all of those things. But I do have some questions. I sent an email out to everyone who registered, and a couple questions came back. So far, it doesn't look like there's any on Zoom, but that might be because you've already sent them to me in advance. So one of the questions was around workload. And I think someone referenced that in here. And related to that, I think it's always nice to hear a little bit about a week in the life of an AMBA student. So we don't need to hear from all of you on this because I have a couple other questions, but does anyone specifically want to just quickly overview, with the team meetings, the class, like what does that look like and how many hours a week did you put towards the program? Anyone?
I can maybe jump in because
Sure,
again, I
thanks,
think we had
Haley.
like a unique team dynamic. We had some people, and this will come into play in a sec, but we had some people who worked in sports, so they were working late at night, they were working on weekends. We had people who worked in retail banking, so again, like their schedules weren't as set in stone as your typical corporate role. So I think the weekend life was super important. Obviously, you're in class all day Sunday. You have 2 team meetings a week, and you have an admin meeting. So this is kind of like where you go through, like, okay, what are the new projects? Who's going to be the lead on that project? Who's going to be we call it the second, but the person who's supporting the lead. And so you have one of those meetings. Typically, we set them for an hour. As you get to know your team and get to know the team dynamic, it typically gets shorter. You can probably get it down to half an hour. And then on the Monday, you have your half day in class. Those meeting days aren't set in stone. Again, it was just like what worked best with our team. And then the half day on Monday, sometimes I don't know if this has changed since I've been in the program, but sometimes it does rotate or you do need a full day off on Monday. So that is something I would caveat to people interested in the program. Depending on the flexibility of your employer, you just kind of need to have that in mind and obviously be proactive on it. And I would highly recommend, if possible, for you to leave that afternoon open, whether it's for additional team project working sessions or even your own kind of individual projects to work on. It is nice to have dedicated time that's not on a weekend, particularly if you do have a family or other obligations outside. And then what we would do is on Wednesdays, we'd also do a working session. So working sessions is where you dedicate time to your projects. So we did a 3-hour working session. Some teams in my cohort split it up. So they do an hour and a half one day, an hour and a half the next day. But we preferred just to kind of sit down and have the full 3 hours. And this is where we would work through all of the projects that we had on the go, and we do reviews together. We do brainstorming sessions. So those were kind of the 2 dedicated times that we really had set outside of class. Other than that, obviously, how you work on projects is we typically had the team lead, and then there was like components within that. And so you'd have like ad hoc working sessions. In terms of time spent on program, I don't want to give a hard and fast number, but I would say you definitely have to dedicate a significant amount of time to it. I'd say like you're probably looking at like 20 hours a week, depending on what your team wants to achieve. So that I would say is like the benchmark. With that being said, there are ebbs and flows of the program, and they do a really great job of laying that out, especially on session. In the first January session, they'll show a calendar and you'll see kind of like when all your deliverables are, so you can kind of map out those ebbs and flows. One thing we found really important as a team as well is sometimes people do need a break. And so we would kind of map out, very similar to what you would do in a corporate job, is, hey, I'm going to go on vacation for this week. What are the deliverables and how do I fit into those deliverables if I'm going to kind of get a break to reset? So all that to say, it is a lot of work for 1 year, but there are ebbs and flows.
I love that idea. The team vacation or team member vacation. I think that's amazing. I'll give that as advice going forward. Another question I had are about those deliverables. And so I don't know, Shauna or Max, if you want to speak to this, but we always get a lot of questions, and I got a specific question in my email about what those deliverables look like. People often think that's, a lot of exams like an undergrad. Can you speak to, the types of assignments you were given, team-based or individual? Shauna, I see you're off mute there.
It really varied. I think we never had one in our year where it was just, we were all sitting in one room taking an exam. We did have exams, but I found they were a little more flexible in the sense it would be like, okay, this is open between this hour and this hour. You have this time to go and complete it. Or this is the final deliverable. It's like in an exam format, but the deadline, you'll get it a week in advance and it's due this day. I found most of what we did was more like assignment project type of deliverables. So some of them would be like a report or a presentation or like a slideshow or a deck or something like that. So I think there was a lot of variation between what the deliverables looked like and what the actual deliverable was. Like there were some of them where we didn't submit anything. It was just our presentation, but you had to do the like slideshow that goes along with it and the preparation and all of that to present, but the deliverable itself was just the presentation.
Right. Okay, great summary. Okay, a lot of the other questions were around admissions, which I won't get into today, but I will say there is a webinar up on the website that was recorded previously on the application process and what that looks like. So I encourage you to take a look at that. But the final question I have for all three of you, and maybe we'll start with Max, is advice. So if you had one piece of advice for an incoming student or candidate that wanted to start in January, what would it be?
I think just go in with an open mind and be ready to learn. Take on every class and every assignment with that in mind. And there'll be times when you're feeling a bit overwhelmed with school, work, personal life, and just still kind of remember that it's 1 year and you're there to kind of to learn, right? And when you finish the program, you want to look back and feel that you got everything out of it that you could, and that comes from that open mind and trying to learn from every experience.
Great advice. Haley.
Yeah, I'd say from an academic perspective, this might not make a lot of sense today, but once you start in January, it'll definitely click. We talked a lot earlier on about the team norms and you setting up kind of like, there's going to be a lead in a project, there's going to be support, there's going to be different roles that everyone plays in the project, and kind of these norms are set out by your team coach early on in the program. And I think when you start to get really busy and overwhelmed, there can be tendencies or temptations to be like, you know what, let's just divide up these 7 projects that we have on the go, and one person kind of like leads each of them, and like there's less interaction and you can kind of work a little bit more siloed. And my biggest piece of advice is, although that's really tempting, especially when you're overwhelmed, try and stick to the team norms, because you'll just get so much more out of it. You'll get to touch more projects, you'll get to learn more, you'll get to work with different leaders all the time. And so I just say, like, really, really try and like lean on those teams norms, even when it gets really difficult.
That's great advice. Diana Drury she's our team coach or our director of team coaching. She'd be so proud of that advice. And then finally, Shauna.
So maybe I'll do one on the team and one on yourself. For the teaming stuff, like everything Haley said is so relevant and like resonated, but also communicating with your team will be key. Like regardless, when you are working with the same set of people for an extended amount of time, there will be challenges. So building that foundation of like goodwill, trust, like collegiality between team members, I think helps so much in overcoming some of those challenges, and really helps you form like a good bond based on trust to be able to like have a really successful year where you feel like you can lean on each other. On the self part is, Emily said this before, but your MBA is really what you put into it. So like thinking about what you want out of the MBA, like what are you planning to go in, like thinking about questions that you have, really understanding what resources you have available to you and exploring them during the year, I think is so important. It's going to be a busy year for sure, but you can get so much out of it by preparing. So really like think about your intention with it when you start out to set yourself up for success.
Excellent advice. I want to thank all three of you. First of all, it's always so great to see alumni, and we've missed you. It feels like we see you all the time for 12 months, and then you're gone. So it's so great to see you all again. But also, you all offered incredible insight and advice, and I know not just myself, but all the candidates listening here live today, or in the recorded session, very much appreciate it. I will say, if you want to take the next step, or if you have further questions, you can use this QR code here on the screen, and that will get you into booking a meeting with a recruitment advisor. Or, of course, you can just submit your questions or your preliminary application online, and that will pair you up with an application advisor who will walk you through the whole process. And then hopefully in a couple of years, you'll be sitting on an alumni panel like the three of these individuals today. I thank you all so much for joining me. Thank you to our incredible alumni. We really appreciate your involvement, and I hope everyone has a great sunny, hopefully also in Halifax and Calgary, because it is sunny here in Toronto, kind of. It's a little getting dark, but it was sunny all morning. And I hope you all have a great Wednesday. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.